Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
We're here with our friend Ruth today. And Ruth and I, say hi, Ruth.
Hello.
Hello.
I said say hi, Ruth.
Oh, hello, Ruth.
No,
Oh, sorry.
Say it.
Hi, Ruth. That was very confusing for
You
me.
were not very good at following directions,
I am
were
not.
you?
No.
Ruth got to be one of our roommates in this last season, and it's been such a delight, a joy in having her participate in our world. One of the most delightful parts is that I could sit and exchange nerd out moments that would normally be very shameful, sitting alone in my office with my action figures, getting excited as an adult who's almost 40. But I have Ruth along with me to sit and nerd out on my most recent Ninja Turtles that I got, and that was delightful.
Oh, it was delightful.
It
Listen,
really was.
let me just clarify some things for the people. Okay.
For the people.
For the people. Listen, people. I loved the Ninja Turtles as a child. Cartoons were a very comforting, safe place for me.
Oh.
So Justin's action figures remind me of my childhood comfort.
Oh.
I am not on the same level as Justin.
Yeah.
Am I having shame about you thinking that maybe I'm on the same level as Justin? Possibly.
That's hysterical.
It was delightful to watch you two go back and forth. Like, there was so much genuine excitement. It was like ping-ponging between you guys. Oh my gosh, look at this figure and look at this. Look at how realistic it is. Look at how it looks just like it.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is in my early 20s, I kind of skulked through toy aisles at Toys R Us when that was a thing, when that actually existed. And I would like go in there and almost act as if I was buying something for some kid or something. I don't know. Like, I thought like
people can tell.
People could tell.
My
I'm in
nephew
here for me.
wants.
And when they would ask me for gift receipt, do you need a gift receipt? I'd say yes. Sometimes I think I made up absurd ruses where I'd be like, yes. My nephew might not like this. I will take that. And then there was this point where I just crossed past my shame and was like, I'm going to accept that this is what I am. I am an adult child.
I am an adult child.
And that's not going to change.
And the funny thing is, you guys both, it was your childhood comfort. I think
really
what
was.
people don't understand is oftentimes things that we become really important to us have a tie back to some kind of positive thing.
The old men with the train tracks where they have the whole train tracks that they build, their train dioramas and stuff. That's Dad was busy off drinking heavily and kicking the dog when he came home, and he's like,
playing with your
but
train.
I have my train set.
That's funny.
Right, my parents won't connect with me, but at least cartoons will.
Yes,
that's real.
that's really sad.
A generation raised by media.
Very
that's
true.
What we all are. That's what we all are. So shame is the conversation today.
Clearly,
What
I
is
loved
shame?
watching both of you just shamelessly
I mean,
plug
it was a
shame.
flip between shame and Ninja Turtles. What were we going to talk about?
We thought it'd be more relatable to more people.
So then they went on a 40-minute rant about Ninja Turtles, and that was the Connected
And
Life
then
episode.
20 minutes about shame.
Yeah. But shame is something that people really have no idea what it is. I can't tell you the countless people that I've had in my office where I go, oh, you have shame. And they're like, no, I don't have shame. Like, convinced. And even friends of ours where I'm like, oh, that you're in a shame spiral. No, this is what was happening. And then they re-explain everything. And I'm like, that is shame.
Yes. People do not get it. They don't recognize it. They don't own it. And it is annoying as heck. So we're trying to make you less annoying people.
Yeah.
Wow, who's annoying you, Abby?
Who are you talking to in this podcast right now? Like,
Should I give names? Yeah.
List them off.
Shame them.
I will shame them into learning about shame.
I think it's necessary to really understand it. Like, when we can break it down, like it takes like really breaking down a couple caveats of what shame practically is for us to go, oh, that is shame. That's not just a bad emotion. That's not just a bad day. That was me wallowing in shame. And there's also a culture at large that we see inside of the world that is anti-shame shamers. They're
anti-shame shamers.
Catchy.
They're wanting to shame they want to be stewards of love who are shaming everyone into being better people and stuff like that.
So there is a movement right now that is very much, it's the cancel culture. Like, you can't shame anyone, but we can shame you if you don't believe the same as us.
Right. And we will cancel you.
Yeah. But we're not going into that right now. We're going to start with shame.
And it's not a political show. It's just a conversation about how we're managing ourselves as culture. Culture
absolutely.
So shame. Hey, Ruth, you got some of that? You got a little shame in your pocket?
I got a little shame in my pocket. I got a pocket. What is it?
I got
pocket full of sunshine.
Pocket full of shame.
Pocket full of shame.
That's funny. So tell us about what your life was like before you understood shame.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I'll just tell you. Discovering what shame was probably one of the biggest light bulbs I've ever had in my life.
Game changer, right?
Game changer. I was one of those people. You have shame. What? No. I don't have any shame. What are you talking about? I'm fine. Clearly not fine, but I'm fine.
Yes.
I grew up with so much going on inside of my internal world. And what I mean by that is always second guessing myself. Am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? Am I doing this too much? Am I too much? Am I lovable? Am I not lovable? Am I too loud? Am I too quiet? Am I not funny enough? Am I not beautiful enough? Am I blah, 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 blah. Constantly in every different environment. In
a barrage
school,
of criticisms.
Oh my gosh. In school, at work, in any environment, in family, at home, constantly looking for every way that I am falling short.
Yes.
And then consequently living in an emotional space because of all of those things that are running through my head constantly about how I'm not enough. So I would get really mousy and really quiet, or I would just completely disassociate and space off. My mom called it space cadetting.
Oh, space cadetting.
She could sit with me in the living room and she'd be like, Ruth.
You were gone.
What?
Yep.
Are you talking to me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. And I'm just lost. I'm not somewhere happy. I'm just lost, assessing
You're in a vortex of pain.
Of pain about my world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I grew up with a ton of shame also, and I was thinking about the space cadet thing, and I remember I was best friends with this girl and this guy who ended up dating. So the three of us always hung out, and then they started like being really weird and makey outy all the time.
Oh,
yeah.
And I was like, "Oh,
they made you a gooseberry."
It was
Sorry.
so awkward for me to be around them, and I literally remember, like, I wouldn't have said I felt shame back then.
Did you feel a cringe?
Oh, I felt the cringe.
A cringe.
So
That's such a good way to describe it, right? Everyone knows that cringe.
Yes.
The shudder.
Uh-huh.
Yes. And so what I did was the same thing. I literally like jumped out of my body. It was before cell phones, so I couldn't act like I was scrolling.
That's true.
I would just like act like I was just gone. And then what happened is I eventually learned how to just be gone. And it was to avoid the moment of feeling on the outside.
Right.
One of the things I would say,
the awkwardness, the weirdness of it all.
There's two things that I would say really affect shame, and one is the feeling of belonging. So every single human wants to belong. They want to feel like people love them, approve of them, accept them, and most people don't grow up in environments where there's unconditional love and acceptance.
Truth.
And so what we do is we learn the rules of the game.
Yes.
What is it that I have to be in this group? And every group is different. So if I was a part of your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle group, I would have to learn the characters of the thing, and I'd have to learn the language. Or people would be like,
what are you, an idiot? How do you not know this? You're not
you
a
don't
real
belong
turtle
here.
fan, which I've seen inside of those nerd groups. Somebody asks a question about a character from an episode, like, you haven't seen that episode? You're not a turtle fan.
That's hysterical.
Like, is this happening? Get a life. Oh, wait, I'm here in this group.
Yeah. So people often feel shame if they get ousted from a group, or if they feel like they don't belong.
Mm-hmm.
That feeling of there's something different about me than there is with the collective.
And that's bad or that's wrong.
And that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing I would say is that shame also is a big, like, what I do is who I am. So if I make lots of mistakes, I am a mistake.
I am
if
a loser.
I fail,
I am a failure.
I am a failure. If I lose a friendship, I'm horrible at friendships. If a guy breaks up with me, I'm unworthy of love. Shame is
an identity assessment.
Yes.
Assessing who we actually are as opposed to how dumb we're acting.
Totally.
I think that you can act foolish and you can acknowledge that was a foolish decision.
Yes.
And that can be shame-free and just be like, no, there was a lack of a choice of any self-awareness inside of that.
Yeah.
That hurt a lot of people.
Yep.
That destroyed a lot of people. That doesn't mean I'm an evil villain.
Yes.
But I did do something that was very destructive and I need to clean that up. And when shame's not there, there's a lot of peace inside of your soul. Maybe a sense of grief about some of the stuff. There are some things that are grief worthy inside of our decision making that otherwise would be just shame worthy. It's actually just grief worthy where you go, oh, I need to actually grieve and be a little bit, I'm a little bit sad that I actually acted out in that way or participated in this.
Absolutely. So, Ruth, why don't we jump into when you discovered shame? What is it that you learned about it and how did that affect your life?
Yes. So, first of all, I learned that shame was a thing. And
it's an emotion?
It's an emotion, and it was radically affecting my life. I think we'll talk a little bit about what shame feels like for people.
Yeah.
But first of all, I started to recognize what shame felt like for me. And for me, it often felt like that, ooh, I'm crawling inside of my own skin. I want to hide. Don't see me. Don't look at me. I'm disassociated out of my body. I'm not present. And so I began noticing that I would have these emotions and I would do these behaviors pretty frequently. And it was usually after some sort of interaction with somebody that felt a little bit ambiguous about what they were thinking or what they were feeling. And I began realizing, oh, before I have these emotions, I will have these crazy flood of thoughts of, oh, they thought what I said was stupid. He looked angry when he was looking at me. He was not happy to see me. He looked so bored. That guy just walked away from me without finishing the conversation. So I'm making up all of these stories inside of my head about how I'm not enough and they're rejecting me and they don't want to be around me. And then all of a sudden I feel all of this flood of shame emotion and I'm thinking, I got to get out of here.
Right.
Yeah, because you're creating a narrative in your head around judgment. So it's I'm creating many judgments, whether it's judgments of what they think, how they feel, or it's judgments about how I'm being perceived or how I'm acting, judgments about whatever. It ends up having a root of judgment. All shame does.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's micro moments where I'm looking at a scenario and instead of being able to say, oh, he was probably hungry, or I don't know what was going on inside of her world. I don't know what she was thinking. I personalize it and make a micro judgment of, oh, well, I must not be enough. I must not be interesting enough. It's all about me. It's all about how I'm unworthy of connection. I'm afraid of rejection. And I began realizing how much this was a part of my relationships and how much this was a part of my day-to-day life. And seeing the fact that when I agreed with shame, I was actually pulling myself out of connection. Which is the thing I was trying to protect in the first place.
Because really, when we get into that, we start making assessments about whether or not we're lovable. And whether or not we're worthy of that connection. And so it just keeps creating more and more distance as we're in that fight with that thing.
And for me, what shame does is shame shuts down my ability to like me. So let's say I'm in a conversation with somebody and I walk away and think, oh, I think they thought I was stupid. I immediately go into beating myself up for being stupid or for what I said or for how I did it. So what the one of the deepest pains about shame is deciding to turn the faucet of love off towards myself. In that moment. And it becomes self-abandonment where I assume someone doesn't like me.
Yeah.
And so I decide not to like me.
Yeah. And it's often a self-protection mechanism, isn't it? Like we think we're protecting ourselves from rejection. We think we're protecting ourselves from being exposed for not being enough. But what we actually end up doing is turning on ourselves, punishing ourselves, hurting ourselves, removing ourselves from love and connection, which is probably the main thing that we need in that moment if we're feeling insecure.
Yeah.
And that's that for me in my journey personally with shame. Is as I began to recognize a lot more of what it was and how it was operating, I would be really deliberate in the midst of destructive measures or mistakes or messiness. I would begin to give myself permission to be loved. Internally, I'd be like, I give God permission to love me. I give these people permission to like me. I choose to like me even right now. And as I'm working this out and cleaning this up, it was like a surefire way to begin to get over some of those hurdles.
Absolutely. So, what are the things you learned? I'm sorry, we interrupted you talking about what you learned about shame and how it changed your life.
So I would say the main thing was learning that I had it, what it looked like for me, what it felt like for me, where it was coming from inside of me, and then realizing what it was costing me.
Yeah.
So the lie of shame is always that it's giving you a payoff, that it's protecting you in some way, it's keeping you safe in some way. And I began to see, as I began to learn how much it was actually costing me in terms of I'm beating myself up. I'm being the harshest critic in my own world. I'm being the least loving and kind person in my own world. No wonder I walk around feeling unloved. No wonder I walk around feeling insecure. Like, what's the voice that I'm hearing the most often in my own life? It's my own internal voice.
Right.
And if it's a voice that's constantly telling me every way that I'm not measuring up, I'm going to feel pretty crappy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it's really interesting. Different people have different responses to shame. So I know mine is very similar to yours, and like that I want to crawl out of my own skin, or that I start like I get stuck in my head when I have shame, which is interesting. I'm no longer connected to like my heart, my spirit, my emotions. I'm much more like just logically running through things in my brain over and over. But I know people who the way they avoid shame is to get busy. The way they avoid shame is to have a next huge fun hit. The way that they avoid shame is to blame. I know a lot of people that when they feel shame, they villainize something. And because the shame is, I'm afraid that I'm bad, which means deep down, I'm afraid I'm unlovable and that I'll never belong. And so what people will do is they'll demonize the other person so that they don't have to feel shame anymore. Which will be like, well, they're bad. I don't even want to be a part of that group. So they're stupid, and that's the problem. Or you're making me feel this way. And so blame is a way that you can recognize that you're feeling shame.
Yeah.
Do you have any that you want to add?
I mean, just for me, I don't have anything profound. I was just thinking again, I feel tension in my body.
Yeah.
A lot of times I would feel tension in my arms, my chest. It would like tighten up, and I'm like recoiling in a moment. And it's almost like as if you were feeling really unsafe, but it's this shame is really just battering you really hard. And so you might say something, and then all of a sudden it feels like all this tension happens right in your chest, and almost like you're holding your breath. Might be like, I can't believe I did that and I said that. That is an emotion of shame. And that's one expression. Some people may not have that body manifestation. All I can do is talk about my experience, but I know that that's how I carried a lot of it.
And I think a lot of shame is defensiveness. Like I was thinking, I was going to give some shame-free examples because I think that's a way to learn to recognize shame is what does it look like shame-free? So I am involved in confrontations all the time, confronting people, being confronted. It's like, I'm a straightforward person and we're dealing with emotional issues. So it's a constant thing. When I'm shame-free, someone can come confront me and I can be present and I can seek to understand and ask them questions, and I can have my love turned on the whole time because I'm not afraid that if I did something wrong, it means I'm bad.
Right, that you're unworthy of connection.
That I'm unworthy of love. Like when I'm connected to, I have worth, even if I made a mistake or even if I did something that hurt you, I'm still worthy. Then that enables me to be present with you in that situation. And so most of the times when we do things with couples, people will say they have no shame. And then you'll say, but if you had no shame, anytime your spouse came to you, even if they used blame language, you would be able to seek to understand what was underneath that blame language.
Yeah.
If your identity wasn't being called into question, if your worthiness, if are you good or bad as a human wasn't the question, then you would feel safe and secure to be able to keep your love turned on.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think another way that it shows up that I've seen inside of a lot of people and even in myself in certain moments is you slip into performing.
Yes.
You slip into, I
Proving.
feel insecure that if I authentically show up in this relationship or this scenario that I'm going to be received well. So I'm going to figure out exactly what it is that you want or exactly what it is that the environment is wanting. And I'm going to become that. I become a people pleaser. I become a yes person. I become, yes, you want me to be loud and funny and charismatic? I'll be loud and funny and charismatic.
Right.
Yeah. Or even like other things like, oh, I feel like I'm not worthy, so I'm going to make the most money.
Yeah.
And then I'll show you that I'm worthy. Or I feel like I'm not worthy, and so I need the nicest house. Or like it's anything that you're doing.
I have to look the best, be
Yeah.
the best, have the best. A lot of that stuff all comes from this insecurity, insecure shame place.
You're basically trying to say, I'm going to prove to you that I'm enough.
Yes.
Right.
Instead of innately, inherently believing that you are enough.
Yeah.
So what did you do on your journey to get rid of shame?
I, first of all, a lot went back to what Justin was saying, which is finding out those places where I was judging myself. I think it's really hard to break out of shame without first going inside and figuring out the places that we are deciding that we are unworthy of love.
Yeah.
The real thing is not that I'm super afraid that Justin thinks I'm unworthy of love.
Right.
It's I've decided I'm unworthy of love for X, Y, Z. And so really tuning in with myself, getting present with myself, paying attention to my self-talk is what I mean throughout the day. Like, oh, I'm noticing that I'm feeling the emotion of shame. What did I just think about myself?
Yes.
What judgment did I just make? And then something that I began to really notice about shame is that it pulls you away from other people.
Yes.
Right? It's a very hidden world, as in it's hidden inside of you and nobody else really knows what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I began, I called it my anti-shame campaign.
Yes.
And it basically, all it meant was anytime I was feeling shame about something or judging myself for something, instead of keeping it on the inside and letting it become a shame world, a hidden shame world in me, I would find someone who felt safe to me and I would tell them about it.
Yeah.
I would say,
So
listen,
good.
I was in this scenario and I said this thing and I looked at their faces and they looked like they wanted to kill me. What do you think about that?
Yes.
And there's something about just saying our judgments out loud, saying the thoughts that are rolling around inside of us that begins to break where they feel really high stakes and they feel really life and death. And someone can listen to it impartially and they can say, yeah, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Totally. I think it also helps you to be able to better connect with healthy logic. So I think our emotions and our logic are supposed to live hand in hand inside of in balance. They're both an equal gift to us, and veering on either side of it.
Well said.
Yeah, veering on either side. Thanks. Veering on either side of that creates a very destructive, unbalanced life.
Either over emotional or over
logical. And they're both a train wreck. So really being able to say, hey, this is happening out loud, and my own brain goes, there's actually no sense to that. That was completely absurd that I would think I'm the most horrible human being on the face of the planet because I made a joke at an inappropriate time and people like gave me a stink eye.
Totally.
Right.
There's also a part of your brain that unless it hears what you're saying out loud, it doesn't process the same way. And so by sharing out loud with another person, you will think differently about your own thoughts.
Yeah. And I think it holds you accountable to what you're saying to yourself.
Absolutely. Especially when if you share it often enough and you get really good at practicing that, you'll get to a place where you're like, oh my gosh, I live in a crazy world internally, constantly 24/7. I'm making these heavy assessments and self-judgments, and I'm in these shame spirals. I have to do something about this.
Yes.
Because if you don't ever talk about it, it's like, there's just this feeling there, but there's this huge blinking red light that starts happening when we see that's a consistent thing going on.
Yeah. One of these things, I bet you were about to mention this, Ruth, and I'm so sorry to steal it from you. But on the topic of sharing things out loud, one of the things I have found combat shame in my life is vulnerability. Because shame is that idea, performance and hiddenness. So I need to look the way you want me to look in order for me to be lovable, or I need to be who you want me to be in order for me to be lovable. And so vulnerability is not just sharing honestly, because I know a lot of people who can share honestly their deep, dark thoughts and feelings. That doesn't necessarily even mean they're being vulnerable.
Right.
Being vulnerable is like, I'm allowing myself to share this with you and allow myself to receive love and comfort from you.
Yeah. A way I would describe that is there's a difference between transparency and vulnerability. Yes. So transparency would be, I let you look through the window and see everything that's going on inside of my world, but you can't touch it and you can't affect me.
Yes.
Yeah.
But vulnerability is, I'm going to let you come inside. I'm going to let your words affect me. I'm going to let your love affect me. I'm going to let the way that you respond to me change how I feel about myself.
And I think transparency actually is very helpful in overcoming shame, but vulnerability. So talk about how vulnerability played a part in your anti-shame campaign.
So I literally began to make a commitment inside of myself of, I began to have the realization that I was the cause of my own problem.
We say that in our office all the time.
We've all been there.
All the time.
You are the cause of your own problem.
Yeah, you are your own problem.
Like I often would have thoughts, when I would feel so bad about myself, I often would have thoughts, if only I had better friends, if only I was in a different environment, if only I had better parents, then maybe I would get to feel good about myself.
Right.
And this began to shine the light for me of, I am the cause and I am the reason that I feel horrible about myself. I'm the reason that I feel disconnected. I'm the reason that I feel unworthy of love because I'm trapped inside of this negative self-talk, self-judgment, shame spiral. And so once I kind of grabbed a hold of that, I was like, okay, I can't afford to be the cause of my own pain anymore. Yeah. I'm going to run at this. So any place I would catch myself, and it took a lot of practice to catch it. Sometimes it would take a week, then it would take a few days, and then it would take a few hours, and I can catch it pretty quickly now. Mm-hmm. But if I catch a self-judgment thought or some negative self-talk and I can feel myself having that shame response, I'm going to, instead of doing what shame does, which is I'm going to pull away and isolate to keep safe, I'm going to operate in the opposite, which is vulnerability, and I'm going to go find someone who feels loving and safe in my life, and I'm going to invite them into my world to hear my judgment statement so that they can help me get to love. They can help me get to compassion.
So good.
Yeah. Was it scary?
Terrifying.
What did it feel like?
Oh, it felt like you're
so
about
exposing.
to... So exposing. It feels as though I vividly remember telling I had a masturbation addiction for a long time. And as a woman, I thought this was the worst thing in the world. Yeah. Only men struggle with this.
Totally.
There's something raging and out of control about my sexuality. So I was like,
I'm so broken.
I'm so broken.
I just want to highlight really quick. That is a very common shame thing. I'm the only one. I'm so broken. If people knew this about me, they wouldn't love me. That is like shame language to a T.
Yes. And I remember thinking, I'm going to take this piece of information to the grave with me. Nobody.
No one will ever know I masturbated.
Gonna know about this. and I had this moment where I ended up sharing with a girl that I was living with at the time that I had struggled with masturbation. And I cannot tell you. I literally thought like the ground was going to swallow me whole. I was like, no one's ever going to want to be my friend anymore. This is it. This is the end of, like, no one's going to want to connect to me.
And so you told her that Did she follow up with, "Oh yeah, I ring the devil's doorbell all the time too"?
If she'd have said that, I don't know. I would have known what she meant.
I saw it in a meme. It was so funny. It was a joke. Yeah.
But she literally responded with, "Oh my gosh, I love you. This doesn't change anything that I think about you." And you would have thought that someone had just told me that I'd won the lottery.
Right.
Like, it was like 10-ton weights began to fall off my back. I felt so free. And I think I ran and I told you. And
you did.
I ran and I told my parents, which I don't necessarily recommend. But especially when your parents are very English and very...
Right. Like, oh.
I think I told my dad,
"Ugh."
and my dad was like, "Oh, very, very good."
Very good. Very good.
But I began having this sensation of, oh, this is this space inside of me that I have judged as unworthy of love. And that if people saw me, they would reject me inside of this space. And for the first time in my life, I'm feeling accepted in it. I'm feeling loved in it. I'm feeling connected in it and not alone. And I began getting addicted to this freedom sensation of like, oh, I can actually be... Here's a way to deal with those places that feel really scary and really painful inside of me. And I can bring love and truth in.
Yeah, that transparency feels so relieving and exciting.
And you started actually owning yourself more, owning your life more. And there was confidence I saw in you making brave choices. Like just by you over and over again exposing things, you were becoming more and more confident.
Yeah, and I think when you engage in vulnerability in that way, you are more and more showing up as your authentic self.
Yes.
And you are less and less showing up as the version of yourself that you think people want to see. And that's a fake confidence.
Right.
Go ahead.
That's a fake confidence when I show up as who I think Justin wants me to be.
Yep.
And then he affirms that version of Ruth because he's not actually really affirming me.
Totally.
So the more I would step into vulnerability and show you who I really was, and I would get positive responses, and I would feel seen and I would feel known, it began to build confidence.
Now,
And
what about...
let me add this now on the confidence note real quick. If you're looking at your life saying, "I don't feel confident in my life," it's because you have shame. Period. End of story. It is one of the core roots inside of you, because confidence, really true confidence, not illusionary confidence like you were talking about, trying to make myself be what other people want me to be, but true authentic confidence is this settledness inside of yourself of self-acceptance. I have come to a place of self-acceptance, and shame is the opposite of self-acceptance. It's saying I don't accept who I actually am. I'm rejecting it based on these actions and decisions and these judgments that I have inside of myself. And so really, if you're walking around going like, "I don't feel like I have confidence," all right, start asking yourself, where do I have shame that is keeping me from a level of self-acceptance that gives me this sense of peace with myself, regardless of the circumstances that I'm inside of?
Yeah. So a huge part of breaking shame is being connecting that you are worthy of love. And I know for all of us, a huge part of that is having a relationship with our Creator, God.
Yeah.
That is a loving God who sees us and sees that we're worthy and lovable, and has called us lovable.
Yeah.
And so having an external source of love has been a huge part for me. And unfortunately, in religion, lots of times people have explained a God that is very shaming and very condemning. And so it has not helped them connect to a source of love that is immovable.
Right. They even view the judgment of God as something that is actually a punishing type of judgment.
That is shaming.
Right. A shaming, punishing type of judgment, where I believe that an unconditionally loving Creator can create a judgment that says, "Hey, like, there's a problem here," but that assessment can be one that's free from shaming the actual creation and free from making an identity out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just listening to a book about people who died and then came back from dead. And NDEs, near-death experiences.
Yeah.
And several of them had experiences where they went through with God a review of their life, and they could feel all of the different places that they made mistakes, that they did things wrong, that they messed things up, but they felt as they were seeing those things, they were feeling unconditionally loved and accepted in the midst of that.
Right.
And so again, shame is, because I think a lot of people, to get rid of shame, get rid of core values and standards.
Right.
So here's a good example.
There's a cancel culture on core values and standards right now.
Absolutely. So it'd be
get
like
rid
this.
of any standard, so now you don't have to feel bad about it. So go ahead.
Yeah, I have an example that will be exactly what you're looking for. But like, let's say I feel shame about looking at porn. So one of the ways that I'm going to deal with feeling shame about looking at porn is to decide that looking at porn is fine.
Right.
Right.
There's no problems whatsoever with this. No more shame. Right.
Yeah.
I've changed the rule to the game.
Yeah, like there is a group now that is about like having attraction towards little kids, and they're trying to get rid of they want to break the shame off of that.
Wild Nambla.
Yeah, but so the concept is get rid of the core value that says that a behavior is wrong. So maybe you're a liar and you're like, well, I don't think lying's wrong. Right. Or you're having an affair and so you decide, I don't think the institution of marriage should matter. Like oftentimes what people try to do to get out of shame, like to get out of that feeling, is to nullify. They think the source of the feeling is the standard.
Right, is having some form of a standard or expectation.
But that actually never gets rid of shame.
And really, a lot of people ask me like, so I even help people get liberated from their cultural standards, because a lot of times people they're only living by rules inside of their head. And a lot of those rules, like, what should I do? What shouldn't I do? What's right? What's wrong? They're very confused trying to figure that out. And I really reduce it down to a conversation of looking at the fruit or the byproduct of my decision making. Does this lead to destruction and chaos that leaves people in a whole bunch of pain? So the idea of an affair, like the fruit of that. If I go have an affair, what is the byproduct of me having an affair? I've now shattered trust with maybe dozens, if not hundreds of people.
You have shattered trust with our whole podcast audience.
And if we talked about me and an idea of an affair, if I have an affair now, I have absolutely destroyed Abby's heart in that behavior. I have created maybe a deep destructive infliction with the person that I had the affair with.
Yeah.
And you can start going down the string of stuff and you go, okay, so I know that a relationship with this decision is super destructive. I don't need to go into a shame spiral over that. I can actually just look at it and go, that's not actually healthy.
Yeah.
And so when we start looking through the standard of what is healthy and what isn't healthy, we don't have to eliminate the standard. We can go back to, all right, there can be a standard, and this is a good standard because we know the byproduct of crossing out of the standard is this type of destruction. So now that I'm going to hold that standard, I'm going to look at this over here and figure out how to eliminate my relationship with self-judgment.
Yeah. we had. Oh, did you want to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say shame. I mean, shame is about punishment, right?
Yes.
Right.
Shame is an emotion that we're using to punish ourselves in order to bring change. Mm-hmm. So what you're talking about is we're talking about taking away the need to be punished.
Right.
So if I take away the standard, then I don't need to be punished for anything.
Right.
Right. Instead of eliminating a punishment culture and implementing a health culture.
Yeah. Like what you're talking about, Justin, is when I'm connected to loving myself well, I want to make decisions that engage loving myself well.
And loving others well.
And loving others well. I was thinking about Paul Young because he had an affair, and this is a great example. And he had to run after his shames and his fear. Am I unlovable? Am I unworthy? Which the truth is, all of that was there before he had the affair. The affair wasn't why shame was there.
Right.
Shame was there, and that is part of what created the affair. Absolutely. So lots of people have it backwards. But one of the things that I saw is as he ran after shame and got rid of it in his life, he then could repent and repair in the most healthy way. And I've watched people who can't apologize and who can't take ownership for their part in things. It's a shame culture. And so if you have to if you have to be like, well, I did nothing wrong in this. I did nothing wrong in this conflict. You're the one who did it all. Well, if you can't take ownership for your part, then you are living trapped under shame. And so I'm just wanting to drive home that point that you can't remove. People think shame is an external driven thing. Like the system of rules brought me shame. But it's an internal world that you can agree with or not agree with. And I've seen that because when I'm in a healthy place, I can be in a group of people who all believe different core values than me, and I cannot feel shame about being different.
Yeah. I want to add this, even in Paul's scenario, he could have easily justified his affair and continued to protect the shame that he was feeling, or protect that negative emotion he's feeling, and tried to subside it and subdue it and make it go away. And he could have walked out of his marriage completely and been like, no, absolutely not. I had every justification for this affair that I had, and I'm fine. He actually wouldn't have eliminated the shame that was deep down inside of him. He would have eliminated the scenario that was pushing on the shame because he would have created enough distance and disconnection from it, but it still would have come up later, and he would be no more free, and he would have had much more loss inside of his life. And so again, if you believe that you can justify your decisions, destructive decision making, and it will get rid of shame, you are living under an illusion.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I think we fundamentally disagree with the cancel culture, because their hypothesis is if we cancel anything that could cause shame, then you'll be shame free.
Right.
But shame is an internal belief system.
Yes.
It's an internal human condition. It is an internal world, and only we have the power. Like here's the truth. I've had
let me add to that real quick. The cancel culture is no different than the religious culture. So we go back a couple of generations, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. As we go backwards, we see how deeply entrenched we were in really destructive religion that was all about, you have to do it this way. And as they're starting to get liberation from it and we move forward, we even saw religion's reaction was like, burn CDs and burn posters and burn it all down. And now you just have that same mindset to deal with like behavior and stuff, which is correct all your behavior and will be all good, but you cannot shame someone into love. You cannot shame someone into transformation. You cannot do an external job on something that is an internal job. Yeah,
we're watching culture basically say, like, I'm going to shame you into loving this group of people.
Right.
Like, I'm going to tell you, you're so bad if you don't value this group of people.
And don't value them in this specific expression and how you express it. And so what you create is a bunch of robots inside of that. Who are all just following the rules. Living a fake life following rules rather than having a heart transformation.
And we've seen it in church, like, that happens where everybody's outside, they're doing all the right things, and then they're having all kinds of craziness in their life that is a secret, because external punishment does not create an internal moral transformation.
External punishment creates internal sickness.
Yeah.
1,000%.
I think it even goes to the point that punishment just doesn't bring change.
It can't. It's impossible.
Yeah. It's all founded on the belief that I can shame you into change. I can shame myself into change. I can punish myself into a different kind of behavior that I think is lovable.
Which is like, I'm going to remove, and this is what I'm seeing. And the church did this for years. I will remove love and belonging from you if you don't agree with me.
Yes.
And the concept is, Justin says this all the time, it's one of his most quoted quotes, which is, you cannot sow into darkness and expect to reap in the light. So you cannot sow in self-hatred or shame or punishment and expect to reap love and compassion and goodness. So I can't tell you, Ruth, that you're bad if you don't agree that I should be able to have a water filter. like you're bad if you don't think that water filters are a human choice. And so I can't I will never get the response from you. I will just get a temporary sense of control.
Right.
But if I love you and honor you, I have you being loved well will respond in you loving well.
Yeah.
Much more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the things that I would say is, if you struggle with shame out there, there's a lot right now in culture, and it's trying to polarize you, which means everybody's trying to find who they belong to. Everybody wants to feel like they belong. That's why politics are polarizing even more, because you're like, I'm going to go find the people who have the same beliefs with me, because then I feel like I belong and I feel safe. And then I'm going to accuse anyone else or blame or decide that they're unworthy without actually seeking to understand. So the goal would be connecting to yourself, knowing what's going on in your world. If you're not having the capacity to love people, to extend grace and kindness, there might be a chance that you have a shame trigger happening.
Yeah. And there might be a chance that you're in relationship with punishment, and there might be a chance that you're in relationship with abuse. Yeah. Because you are abusing. When we engage in punishment towards one another, that's a form of abusing each other, trying to control each other, beat each other down in some way, shape, or form in order to yield the results that we want.
Do you have any last thoughts, Ruth, on things that you'd recommend for people who want to get rid of shame?
I think another important thing to mention is being able to step into self-compassion. So
yes,
we've talked a lot about self-judgment and self-punishment. So the opposite of that would be self-compassion, self-love. And often we can't get to that space without the vulnerability step, without the letting people in, saying out loud, hearing the way that we're talking to ourselves, hearing the world that we're creating inside of ourselves. And once we hear it and we see it, we can begin to go, oh, would I ever talk to another human being the way that I'm talking to myself? Would I ever treat another human being the way that I'm treating myself? No, probably not. So we begin to shift the relationship that we're having with ourselves by learning to have compassion. That means having compassionate statements. It means saying, oh, it's okay that you didn't get it right there. It's okay that you felt uncomfortable there. That doesn't make you unlovable. That doesn't make you bad. That makes you so worthy of love. We often will connect to God, to a higher source, to help us have compassion on ourselves. And I think the more we can do that inside of ourselves, we begin to see that change that we're talking about in how we relate to other people and culture.
I'll add this. You know, when people view the concept of compassion, they view it as something that's very impotent. So they're like, well, if I am in relationship with compassion, what will happen is nothing will change. It'll just be a get out of jail free card. And actually, true healthy compassion will compel us to transformation, because once we connect with compassion over ourselves, we also connect with worth and value of ourselves. And when we go, oh man, I am like, me and the people around me are worth a better experience than the destructive nature that I'm in. It's like, if I have an affair on Abby, I'm not going to get out of that destructive behavior if I keep hating myself. I'm going to have to go, Justin, I love you. I see the condition by which you got here. In order to repair this, like, you're worth a better life. And the only way that we can get to that better life is if we get to the healing places that would cause such destructive measures. It's actually ends up, the byproduct of compassion is an invitation to transformation, to the healing process. And so a lot of people, if you have been in behavior where your form of compassion or your version of compassion is letting you off the hook, where just shit stays the same and you keep hurting people and destroying people without any like accountability inside of it, you're not in a relationship with righteous compassion. It's like this unrighteous, false form of compassion.
It's like a pity.
It's like a pity. It really actually is like a pity. Like, oh, that's too bad. Yeah, you had a really tough life. You should be able to do this. Whatever. Don't worry about it. No, true compassion. Also, true compassion doesn't just take you into consideration. It takes others into consideration, because true self-love should translate into others-centered love as well. So it goes from me to them, and I go, okay, to love me. Also, in order to love me, it doesn't mean they have to suffer. There should be able to be a place where when I love me, that also translates into win-win scenarios where everyone else is being loved and cared for as well.
Well, I love that you're saying that, because I've watched a lot of people try to get rid of shame.
Right.
And the way that they do that is becoming narcissistic.
Absolutely.
It's like,
selfish
and
self-absorbed. Yes.
I don't care if my decision affects you, because I'm getting free from shame. And I need to be able to do whatever I want, and I need to be able to hurt whoever I want, because this is how I'm getting liberated.
Right.
instead of, no, the more you love yourself, the more that should overflow.
Right. Into wanting to create a healthy culture. Again, I'm going back to the word healthy culture. This is to get out of shame, is to not to, like, a lot of times trying to figure out how to get free from shame creates a pendulum swinging experience where we lose, again, what Abby was talking about, any type of value system whatsoever. But it's actually about creating a culture of value and worth for us and those around us.
Yeah.
And asking what that looks like.
Yeah. I think positive self-talk and having a source of love that you can connect to, and positive self-talk includes compassion. Part of compassion is, and we made a series on, we did a whole study on compassion that we sell. And part of it is understanding why you did what you did. Because most of our bad behavior is us trying to get our needs met, but in unhealthy ways. So when you can understand why you're trying to get those needs met, and then you can understand there's different ways that you can still get those needs met, but in a different way, it begins to disarm the power of shame, because now it's not, oh, I'm bad. It's, oh, there's this hole in my heart and I've been using the wrong system to cope with that, which empowers you to feel powerful to transform your life.
Right. So an example would be if you talked about my masturbation addiction.
Yeah. Bring it back.
Bring it back. If I can connect to self-compassion and I can begin to understand the why behind what was happening inside of me. Oh, I felt lonely. I didn't know how to connect. I didn't know how to be known. I didn't know how to be vulnerable. I didn't know how to let people in.
Yeah.
So masturbation is a way of trying to meet that loneliness need, trying to feel connection. All of a sudden I can look at myself in that space and go, oh my gosh, like I can feel love and compassion toward you without having to excuse things, but for really seeing the heart of who I am.
Right. And so, and that's right. And then moving forward from that place, you're able to go, okay,
I want to masturbate.
I'm not...
So I must be feeling lonely.
Absolutely. Yes. So you can look at it and you can go, all right, it's not that I'm going to continue a lifestyle drowning in some form of an addiction. It's that now I have an on-ramp to understanding myself.
Yeah.
And now I can go get those things taken care of that need to be taken care of, because that, again, is part of the self-worth element. Like, if I really love myself, I'm not going to just keep giving myself an addictive behavior or substance or whatever it is that doesn't actually meet my core need. That worth and value starts to increase, and I go, okay, I feel really lonely. This is about loneliness. I'm wanting to masturbate right now because I feel this deep depth of loneliness. How do I actually heal the condition of loneliness inside of my heart?
Yes.
Oh, look, I just loved myself and took care of myself well because I found a solution to a need that was present.
Yes. And often the places where we find ourselves the most stuck inside of cycles are shame-based. If we go on the journey of beginning to break shame and learning to know our why and have compassion on ourselves, we can break out of addictions and cycles.
Yes, it's so true. It's the surprise key. People think hating themselves will get them free. They think punishing themselves will get them out, or they think getting rid of the standards will get them free and get them out. But actually doing the hard work, owning yourself, being vulnerable, finding out why you're doing it, and figuring out new ways to get your needs met that are healthy. Even like the affair example you gave, if you're feeling like you want to have an affair, figuring out what are my needs and what are healthy ways to get those met instead of needing to do that.
What is really driving me in this way? What pain and stuff like that? Because again, you didn't take care of yourself well by having the affair.
Yeah.
You didn't. You didn't get rid of the pain underneath it all. You didn't get rid of the loneliness, the fear, the insecurities, whatever it was. You medicated through an affair that lasted for a second and then cost you relationships, cost you maybe money, cost you a whole lot of problems. So,
right. But again, that sounded a little shamey. The goal would be.
No, I'm just saying at the end of the day, there's a loss or a price that you had to pay over here, and it didn't actually take care of the necessary
thing that you're
needs.
Really wanting.
Yeah, you're really wanting. And so at the end of the day, we're trying to get, what do I really want?
And so if you're listening to this and you've done bad behavior, welcome to humanity. We've all made choices
all of us.
that are destructive. We've all made choices that were like not what we wanted. We did the opposite of what we thought would be valuable. We've all done things that we think are the worst, that no one else would forgive us for. That's a part of humanity. And we have the chance now to get love to those places that feel like they could never be loved. We have the chance to let people see who we really are, to stop performing, and to be able to engage people in healthy, love-giving ways. Again, shame blocks our capacity to love and to be loved. So obviously we could talk about shame for a long time because it's such a huge part of humanity. But this is all you get.
That's it.
That's it. In summation, you made it this far. Shame does not work.
Yeah, that's in summation. Shame is bad.
Shame is bad.
Shame sucks. So
love good, shame bad.
We go in depth in our Living Fully Alive course about going through this process, getting out of the rules that you've learned, how to break shame. We actually have Ruth. She teaches in the Living Fully Alive course. Signups for that are coming up. You're going to want to do it. It's going to change your whole life. It helps you change your operating system.
And you can check that out at stumvalconsulting.com, as well as you can find out more about the Compassion Project, which we've talked about before here, to help you walk a journey of compassion out with yourself.
Yeah. And if you want to meet with Ruth, she's a consultant, you can email her at
ruth.outram, OUTRAM @gmail.com.
Nicely done.
Well played.
Also, share this with all your shamey friends.
Yep. Rate, review, subscribe, and share. Go to iTunes now.
Or we'll shame you.
Shame.
Punishment. Goodbye.